they used to have steak tips and stuff, like a real kitchen. I knew people who worked there, and everyone swore by the food and said the steak tips were legit delicious. I never had them, but I had only heard positive reviews from multiple people.
There's airborne cum. I'm not eating in a strip club.
Everything. I've only been to strip clubs 3 times in total in my life. It's just not my scene.
Hold on.
I feel like...
Hold on. I'm sorry to cut you off. Ferg, are you under the belief that there's just cum particles in the air at all times?
Shine a black light in a strip club.
Do you drink when you're in there?
Oh, no.
I didn't want to say it, but I was like, buddy, if they're in the air.
Welcome back, everyone, to S1E1, the show where each week we pick a different sitcom, watch just the first televised episode, and forgetting anything we might know about the future run of that show, rate it and decide if it's a show we want to greenlight or cancel. This week we're going to be talking about The Norm Show. The Norm Show had 54 episodes over 3 seasons on ABC. Today we're talking about episode 1, which is called Norm and the Prototype, originally airing March 24th, 1999. So to get things started, I'm Jay Gags. With me as always, the boys, Joe, Ferg, Nick, and Gordo. What's going on, guys?
Heyo. Hello.
Yo.
I can never tell if we're joking or just stupid. Kind of a mantra for us, actually. Both.
We should stop making like a poll where we all guess what quote Joe's gonna do from the episode.
I have a quote highlighted. I even put it up top, and it's not. I don't even
show
want to
you
say
my
the
notes.
quote.
I've got 5 different options for today. So.
Did any of them have to do with the choice cuts of beef ad?
Oh, yes, it did.
All right, that's the one I was betting on.
To be honest, the reason I didn't do that one is because I think the 3 jokes in that scene are the 3 funniest jokes in the whole episode, and they come so rapid fire that I didn't want to get the discussion of them out early.
Yeah. Well, good call then. So the Norm Show, I'm going to be completely honest. Like, I remember it existing, I guess, but I don't think I've ever actually seen it. So
Me neither.
Me too. I really recognized their like office. That was like the first thing I saw that I was like, oh, okay, I do kind of remember this, but I'm in the same boat. I didn't really remember it that much.
And it had
The
like
first-
a 3-season run, so it's like it was on for a little bit.
The first season of this was on the same night that we all had CCD, but we were, because it was a weeknight and we were like 13, we had to go home after, right? Like there was no hanging out at like 8 p.m. or whatever. So I watched every episode of the first season. It was on after Drew Carey.
Doesn't it have a Drew Carey? Doesn't it have a Drew Carey vibe?
I was going to
It
say
has a very
that,
Drew Carey vibe.
and honestly, I think it's because of The Office you mentioned. The Office is like laid out very much like the Drew Carey office.
It is.
It is, and also the creator of this show also created the Drew Carey show. But then after this show, he created Nikki Cox's sitcom, and Nikki Cox is in this episode, and one of the stars of the Drew Carey show is one of the stars of this show as well. So it's a weird kind of thing.
Whoa!
We've talked about this before. That's like when you look at producers and creators, like that's where you see those links where everyone does it. You know, they bring their people in. And real quick, I just want to remind everybody to go to S1E1pod.com. That's where you can find all the links to our social medias, everywhere you can follow us, rate, review, subscribe, do all that stuff. The reviews are big for us. That really helps us in those algorithms and other people finding us. And additionally, hit us up, S1E1pod, Instagram, and on X.
I hate that so much.
We like talking to you guys. I say it every week. I really like getting the chance to converse with you guys and figure out how you found us and shows you want us to cover and all that. So look us up on those. I wanted to bring up too, this show, season 1 was called The Norm Show. It eventually was just shortened to just Norm for seasons 2 and 3 over like some legal stuff.
I didn't remember that. I remember it being a Norm only.
Yeah, I remember it being Norm.
So the Norm Show for the first season, and that's why I figured, I was like, when I'm writing, I'm like, how do I announce it up top? I'm like, you know what? This is how it aired, episode 1, so I'm gonna call it that.
Is there a reason why? Do we know the legal challenges behind?
I saw 2 different things, but
the one I saw was a cartoon called The Norm.
And yes, I saw that. And then the one I read was that it was over a local public access show called The Norm Show. So I don't know which is completely true.
It seems insane to me that, is this ABC?
Yeah.
Yes.
ABC couldn't just go and squash
Here's
some
$1 million.
local public access show.
We'll take the name. Like,
hey, I would have said that about Vince McMahon and a panda, but sometimes it doesn't work out the way you think it's going to work out.
I take the panda, and I would love for the panda to just rip Vince McMahon apart. It'd be amazing.
So,
and then grow a very weird mustache.
I want to get into Rotten Tomatoes had a 67% critic score, no audience score, and 7.8 overall score on IMDb.
Yeah, it makes sense.
The one thing I remember for the show a lot is that as it goes on, I think it's in the second season, Artie Lang comes on.
I saw that.
And they make a lot of references to Dirty Work. And then even Jack Warden comes in one episode and grabs Norm's junk, like in Dirty Work. And I think Dirty Work is one of the funniest movies of all time. When I met my wife, the first 2 movies we watched were Dirty Work and Freddy Got Fingered. And I was like, if she likes these, she's the one. And here we are 15 years later.
It wasn't Men in Black who like to have sex with each other.
We better have sex with each other. Now he's got my chainsaw. He's using it on me.
Gordo, this was your pick, right?
Yes.
Any particular reason you want us to do this one?
No.
Okay.
Right. Thank you, Gordo.
Awesome. Nice.
Succinct as always.
I mean, I have been. You guys know that I am such a television connoisseur that I just have such a deep well of knowledge when it comes to sitcom shows. No, I just read these off a list and I go, oh, cool, Norm Macdonald had a sitcom. That's got to be good.
Norm Macdonald had a sitcom.
I was going to do the same. I'm glad you did, though, because it didn't sound that cool.
Yeah. And then he killed Nicole Simpson.
But no, I love Norm Macdonald.
I was just going to ask that question. Everybody here loves Norm Macdonald, right?
So when I saw that this was a show, I kind of remembered it. And before I even hit play on this, I thought to myself, there is almost nothing that this show could do to make me not like it. If it's what I thought it was, and it was just like a regular sitcom with Norm as the main character. There's no chance it could be bad. And here we are.
It's true. Every other member of the cast could have sucked. Norm would have made the show awesome.
I was just kind of scrolling through Instagram the other day, and a clip popped up, like an old sketch of him as Quentin Tarantino talking about Pulp Fiction, and it was so funny. He nailed it.
And he's auditioning himself as Burt Reynolds for it too, so he plays two characters. It's so funny.
He's a fucking gem, man. R.I.P.
Yeah, he was a genius. When he passed away, that one really, really hurt. Celebrity Death Row, I was like, oh, that's a bummer. But Norm passing, I mean, he's one of those people who, we've talked about him on the show. I mean, him making fun of Carrot Top's chairman of the board to the actress who was starring in the movie on Conan is maybe the funniest 5 minutes that have ever happened on late night television.
I would have to disagree. Norm at the Bob Saget roast.
Is that where he told all the the old timey dad jokes?
Yeah.
Yes, that was hilarious.
Like, I don't know how. Only Norm Macdonald could pull that off. And if you haven't seen it, please look it up.
It is watching that live and just cackling when he said, "You'll never get over. You're not over the hill. Not in the car you drive." I was like, "This is fucking amazing."
You know what? You know why that was funny too? It was because when he first did it, some of the fellow comedians instantly get it, and the whole crowd's like, "The fuck is he doing?" But his commitment to just not breaking and just keep doing it the whole time won everyone over.
It's what makes it funny, yeah.
Yeah, that's hilarious by the end.
The one thing about that people forget about that I think is the best piece of commitment too, though, is halfway through it too, he's just reading the newspaper, waiting for someone to call him out for reading the newspaper. He just goes, "Oh, sorry, I just wanted something funny, so I was reading Doonesbury." Holy fucking shit. You can't even make fun of him from the podium because he will just shut you down with the dumbest, funniest shit. Also, one thing I will love to mention too is not a lot of people know it, but he put a record out in 2006 called Ridiculous.
I own it.
It's amazing, right? And I usually don't like sketch type of comedy as far as listening to things, but there's a 19-minute sketch about recording a country singer who comes out of retirement who turns out to be gay, and it just unfolds that he's gay through the whole thing. And it's him and Artie Lang in the booth being producers, figuring this all out in real time, that I listen to a couple times a year. It's so funny. There's also one called The First Ever Two Gay Dudes, which
I was going to bring that one up, but I didn't know if it was appropriate.
It's just it's him and Will Ferrell being like, "Why don't we try this out?" And as you can imagine,
That's
it just
my
ends with Norm
ass.
being like, "Yeah, it feels pretty good," and Will Ferrell being like, "Oh my god,
my ass is bleeding! It's fire!"
It's on Spotify. all of his stand-up specials are gold. Everything he's ever done is gold. But those sketches stand in like a weird separate thing he did, and they are very, very funny.
You said it's on Spotify?
Yeah.
Are they like
Norm
Adam
ridiculous.
Sandler-esque when he did his like sketch albums?
Yeah, it's the same idea.
Is it also available on Amazon Music for Ferg?
You're so quirky.
A hater.
Has anybody seen Norm live? I was lucky enough to see him live once.
No,
No,
have
I never
not.
saw him live.
When I saw him live, I almost got high with him.
Cool.
Why wouldn't you?
So I would have. I don't smoke pot, right? Like, it's not a thing I do. This is when I was maybe 22, 23. And my roommate at the time called me and was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm just getting out of work." And he was like, "Okay, here's the deal. Norm Macdonald's in town. He's playing. My friend got us all on the guest list who works there.
Grab your ukulele, hop on your scooter.
Yeah.
Get
Yes.
on.
Scooter. I took my Razor scooter downtown. But he was like, "But Norm wants to get really high. Do you guys have weed?" And my roommates were all big stoners. They're like, "Yeah, sure." He's like, "Okay, well, get here. You're on the list, all of you. And you'll smoke up Norm Macdonald." And I was like, "I will smoke weed with Norm Macdonald. Like, I won't do it otherwise." But that's like such a great story. And we got there, and he must have put that call out to a couple different people, and we like just missed it. Somebody got there first. So like, still, we got free seats. We got to go watch Norm live, and it was fucking amazing. But we didn't get to get high with him, which probably would have spun me out, because those seats that we had were like row Z in the balcony. Like, it was at such a high angle. I'm glad I wasn't also on drugs.
I just saw an Instagram story recently. It was Nick Swardson. I'm sure Jay probably has seen it. And so Nick Swardson's at a bar watching a baseball game, and Norm Macdonald calls him. And Norm's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And Nick's like, "Oh, I'm down at the bar watching the game." He's like, "All right, I'm going to come down." And so Nick's like, "Okay." 9 hours goes by, and Nick Swardson's just drinking, watching multiple games, and he goes to leave. And as he's leaving, Norm Macdonald walks in. He goes, and Norm's like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I'm going home. You said you were coming 9 hours ago." And he was like mad that Nick was still leaving after being 9 hours late, which
Everybody here, I'm guessing,
is a very
has
Norm thing. Yeah.
drank for 9 hours straight at a consistent clip. You are not a human at that point. There is no more. You have to go put yourself to bed at that point.
It's been a minute, but it's happened.
You know, Norm Macdonald before, like,
Well said, man. To Norm.
That's a good eulogy, Gordo.
Norm Macdonald reminds me of like a modern day Leslie Nielsen in the way that they carry themselves, in their humor, and like the way that they interview and such like that. I know that they crossed over, obviously, but I feel
I can kind of see what you mean. Leslie Nielsen was more childish, though, whereas Norm was more like X-rated.
Yeah, I said they were similar, but
I could see Norm doing Detective Drebin, but I couldn't see him doing like a wrongfully accused, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he'd never be Dracula.
Oh no,
I'm dead and I'm not loving it.
Oh, now I gotta drink blood. Well, anyways, yeah, Gordo flexing how little he knows about TV and stuff with that comparison. So, anyways, I think we should get into the episode itself because we've been talking for a little bit already. So in the first scene, we see Norm walking down the street with the pizza, and he spots his dog just like standing in the middle of the sidewalk, and he starts talking to the dog, telling it to move out of the street, and like asking if it's lost and things like that. And the dog's just not moving at all, just kind of sitting very still. And he grabs a stick and throws it, and the dog doesn't flinch. He's like, "What are you, crazy? That's a stick!" like the surefire way he thought he was gonna get it.
If I have one issue with this entire episode, it's that no human would carry a pizza box with an actual pizza in it the way he's holding that pizza. You try to do that
in his hand against his body, right?
Right. The lip of it might catch on you, and then it flips over, the pizza's gone. You have to hold the pizza box like this, clasping the box shut. So if it falls, it's got a tight grip on it.
No, but I think if you're holding your hand over the part that opens, then you should be okay, right? I mean, I wouldn't hold it that way anyways, but...
if you're doing it around the front of it, that works. Like the flappy part.
You guys don't just spin the pizza on your finger as you walk around?
Hey, going home with a pizza!
I get the sad thing where they only make pizzas I can eat in a very small size anyway, so you kind of just walk around carrying it like a little kid holding his dinner.
It just looks like Joe's walking down the street with his Discman.
Yeah.
Yo, I'm so big right now.
I want to be big. Like, well, you can't be, and you can't have Cheez-Its either. Fuck you.
So in the next scene, we're in Norm's apartment, and there's a knock at the door, and it's his friend Laurie, who's played by Laurie Metcalf. It's funny because this is like a real Tony Danza. Huh? Both of them get to play them. Their first names are the same for the two main people in the show.
How far removed, if at all, from Roseanne is she?
About a year.
I was gonna say, because she looks like it. It looks like she came off the set and walked right on. Like,
yeah, their relationship is confusing to me. I'm not really sure.
They do give a weird, like, closer than just work friends vibe a couple times in this episode.
I know. I just kind of get best friend vibes from them.
Yeah, I get best friend vibes.
Will they, won't they?
See, I don't get that. I don't feel like they have that chemistry.
Well, what confused me is like how often she's in the apartment. I know the bald guy's in there at one point too, but other than The Office, and actually no, now I'm thinking of like 10 other scenes where they're together at other places. But
like at the bar, and I do like the idea though that like when you find out how long he's been there, and like that this isn't like a tight knit grew up crew, that the three of them all hang out together and are so close. That's kind of fun.
And just for reference, Roseanne ended about 2 years, almost like it was like 2 years and small change before this.
That was in 97?
Yeah.
And I said it before last time we covered a show with Laurie Metcalf, who I think is one of the greatest actors of all time, honestly. Go watch her episode of Horace and Pete, the Louis C.K. show with him and Steve Buscemi in it. She does a one-take, super long monologue that is literally some of the best acting I've ever seen in my entire life. It's like jaw-dropping how good this one scene is.
I mean,
that show's really great.
This is now the third show of hers we've covered. So we've covered Roseanne, we've covered the McCarthys, and now we're doing the Norm show. So
fourth, she's also in The Big Bang Theory.
Not the pilot,
pilot.
But she is in it.
And
Isn't
I imagine
she in the middle?
Which we haven't done.
We haven't done that yet. And I don't know if we can do the Connors.
It's weird. I am confused.
The Connors is a tough one.
I don't think we can. I would just say I don't think we can.
It's a new name, and it's a season 1, episode 1. If that's our rules, we can.
Based on that, it's season 1, episode 1. I mean, it technically.
I mean, I would love to
cover. Yeah, it's interesting to cover, and we'll
I don't want to
cover
it because I think it fucking sucks. But
I really enjoy it.
I've watched every episode, but this is a conversation.
We'll get there
off
eventually.
Here. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I do love that she has made the character of Jackie when she came back all these years later. Like, put a new spin on it where she's like just totally crazy and spun out.
She's the crazy aunt now. Yeah, totally.
She has so much range.
Oh, yeah, she's phenomenal.
Yeah, she's a great actor.
So he brings her into the kitchen, and when we get in there, we see that dog, and now the dog's like on top of the kitchen table, on like a lazy Susan. And he's like really just excited to show her how it doesn't move. And he's like, look behind you, it's a big pile of bones. And look, it's a helpless kitten. And then she joins in. She's like, look, it's another dog's butt. And this dog's not moving. And then he's like, oh, let me show you a trick. And then he just moves the lazy Susan in a circle, and the dog just like doesn't like. I was wondering, like, do you write this script knowing this dog is out there? Like, there's a dog that can do this?
You gotta find a dog who won't move, or at least heavily medicate one. Like, that is what the thing is. Yeah.
How do you write this script?
Like a Norm.
And then, like, it's very risky, right? You write the script, and then you have to call, like, whatever animal people, be like, hey, I need a dog that's not going to move no matter what, even if I move it around.
I'm sure they knew it was possible.
Yeah, it's a trained animal. Like, I'm sure that's one of the easiest tricks to teach.
I feel like this dog isn't trained, though. I feel like this dog's on Quaaludes. Like, this dog is beyond trained. It's just, like, catatonic, you know?
I mean, Jay, you have a dog. Like, sit is one of the easiest ones.
Yeah, she doesn't do that.
All right, my dog sits. Yeah. My dog learns commands.
No, my dog is the worst. I love her very much, but does no tricks.
Martha's a little poodle girl.
She does the bark and blow your eardrums out pretty good, Jay.
Yeah.
To run around the house and then jump on you when you don't want her to.
Yeah.
She has that cool game where she shits and you pick it up, though.
I've been playing that game for 13 years now, yeah.
Yeah.
So right around the time of the trick is when Laurie notices that the dog has tags on its neck. And Norm's like, oh, what? What does it have, like diabetes or something?
That fucking joke. So one thing I do want to point out, too. He
says diabetes, too.
He says diabetes, which is great. Yeah. But this whole episode is just one-liners, and they all hit. A couple weeks ago, we did Happy Together, which I think is one of the worst shows we ever covered. that had so many jokes and none of them landed. This show
Because
has
you hate
more...
Damon Wayans Jr.
Not correct. But this show has more jokes than that show had by like tenfold. And I don't think there's one joke that doesn't land in this whole thing. Like, it's hard to watch
I
and
agree.
take notes.
Everything works.
Every single joke works and lands, and there's so many of them.
These jokes have Norm's voice in it. You know what I mean? And that
You can
definitely
tell he's a
helps.
writer. There's a scene too where my favorite scene of this whole episode is he says a joke and his friend, I can't remember the character's name, he says something and then Norm starts to smile and you can tell it's a real genuine he was laughing and they didn't cut the camera away, and that always makes me feel so like
He does that a couple times.
it makes you feel like you really care about these characters, like they're like in it together or something. I don't know, but it always makes me root for them more.
It turns out that this dog has an owner when she's reading the tags. And when she reads the address, she's like, yes, that's exactly the address where I found him.
Did anybody look up the address?
I
No.
did not.
No.
It's now a Holiday Inn Express.
Oh.
Neat.
Oh.
It's
Cool.
actually
Dog
got
out
pretty
front?
decent reviews and seems to be fairly inexpensive if you're in the Chelsea area. It's right near Madison Square Garden. So if anybody ever goes to New York and needs to go, like, want to see
It's
wrestling at the
wildly
Garden.
expensive then, yep.
Yeah, this is, like, likely the least expensive decent hotel near there. But, yeah, I looked at it and it's so funny because the picture, it clearly looks like this was probably once an apartment building. But now it's just got banners outside. They're like, we're a hotel now. So
The
it's supposed to
dog
be a
is
weird
just
thing.
the dog is just still
Still
there,
just
like,
sitting out
like in
front.
Futurama.
He's so old. His head's in a jar like Richard Nixon.
And when we cut back outside after that, and we see a man posting like missing signs for his dog, and Norm runs up like behind him because he doesn't want him to notice, but he does, and he's like, "Oh, you found Snoopy? Where'd you find him?" And he's like, he's too nervous to tell him the truth, so he just says he found him like a couple blocks down, and that he should put him on a leash because he's a runner, which obviously this dog doesn't move ever. So
This is the most Norm part. Like, he's Norm so hard here too. He's like, not here, I'll tell you what. Like, that's
Yeah.
such a like his character joke. Also, it's so weird when people name dogs Snoopy that look nothing like the character Snoopy, and it happens
Yeah.
all the time. Be like, who's that Rottweiler who's fucking foaming at the mouth? Be like, oh, that's Snoopy. Like, no, it fucking isn't. That's not what you name that dog.
I think most of the time that would happen because like you let the kids name the dog and stuff. That's kind of ends up how that works.
Yeah.
So I bet nowadays, now that like less kids know who Snoopy is, that like will be a less popular name.
Who's the big one on Paw Patrol?
Well, they're all dogs.
They're all dogs, I
that's
guess, yeah.
That's the whole shtick.
Which one's Paw Patrol?
The one with the dogs.
It's a team
That's
of
5 dogs. They're all like superheroes. A firefighter.
I
They're
meant
all-
which dog? I was making a bad joke.
There's
Oh, okay.
Chase, Marshall, Sky, Rubble, Zuma, and Rocky.
I would imagine most of them are named Bluey now.
Bluey's
Okay.
probably the
Isn't
one.
that
That's
the
a good
big
call.
one?
Yeah.
But from there we get into the intro, which is just it's just like a cartoon of like different people walking through Times Square to the song "Too Bad" performed by Doug and the Slugs. This was fine. It was like upbeat. Like I liked the song, but I thought that cartoon had nothing to do with anything.
I just thought it was
No.
very New York. It's like a guy skateboards and hits a guy. Like they show Times Square, they show New York. I thought it was just good to like show.
But this
Where you
show
are.
isn't like how Seinfeld felt more New Yorky. This, even though this takes place in New York, it doesn't have that like.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was New York.
vibe.
Yeah, it could easily have not been New York, and I wouldn't have known any of the wiser. So I don't know.
It
It's
could have
just-
been any city.
yeah,
Interesting. Two weeks in a row with a cartoon intro.
it is 2 weeks
Yeah,
in a row.
that's
Actually,
true.
and I'll say so. Last week we covered Aliens in the Family. If you haven't watched it or listened to our episode, rather go back and check that out. Aliens in the Family didn't have a lot of redeemable qualities, but I thought the intro was actually pretty good. And did a
Yeah.
good
The
job
animation
telling you
of the intro
story.
was fine, yeah. But I do like this song a lot, though. I've always liked this song.
Yeah, I just felt like the intro itself, they put all this effort into an intro that made no sense. Like, it wasn't like when they just throw up a title screen, they made this whole cartoon thing, and it has nothing to do with anything.
So when the show first starts, when Norm is walking down the street, it flashes the Norm show and it has a little bit of music. I thought that was the intro. And
Could have
like,
at least
this-
made Norm one of the cartoons you walk by.
That would have,
Yeah.
if you made the characters the cartoon,
Yeah,
like if a
that's
kid
it.
hit Norm, you know, like that would be different.
Yeah, and everyone who's bumping into each other could have just been people from the show, and it would have just made more sense. But this was just like, it felt like stock cartoon footage they had, and they just threw it in.
The one thing I did like about this the most, too, though, is like I said, I like that song a lot anyway, but that's like a band who never really was big in America, but were really big in Canada. And Norm being Canadian, like I like that he threw in a bunch of like stuff. Like he played for the Oilers, right? He has a Canadian band doing the theme song. I appreciate that he like put some of those like things that he would have known from back home into the show.
And then in the next scene, we're at Norm's work, and we said this before. This felt very much like The Office from Drew Carey. It was like very much situated the same. Has that big open area with all the desks in it, and then like to the right is like the boss's desk, like the boss's side office rather.
The upstairs of Winford Louder.
Yes. So gave me that vibe immediately as soon as we got to that. So it is interesting to see it's like the same creators. Like they might have even used like a similar, probably just dressed it a little different, but could have even been the same set for all we knew.
Ian Gomez too being in it, like he's one of the funniest side characters on Drew Carey for me, and he works at Winford Louder too. So seeing him up there, I think really like kind of makes it feel
it ties it even more. Yes.
Yeah.
This is when we find out that Norm's a social worker, and he's talking to a kid who seems to be like in and out of trouble. And when they're talking, the kid recognizes Norm, and that's when we find out, Joe, you mentioned earlier that he was a hockey player in the NHL that he used to play for the Edmonton Oilers.
Did you recognize the kid?
I did not, actually.
He was Billy Crystal's son and Analyze This and Analyze That.
Oh man.
That's
I thought this whole
weird.
thing too was a weird reference to Stand By Me when you find out what he stole.
We'll get into it in a second. He's like, when he finds out, you know, he recognizes him from being in hockey, he's like, yeah, that's right. In hockey, you need to understand that there's penalties and rules. And that's when the kid cuts him off. He's like, didn't you get arrested for gambling and tax evasion? Because of this, we now know Norm's backstory and that he's been banned for life from the NFL and NHL.
I think hockey was the wrong choice because I love Norm, but he doesn't look like an athlete or a hockey
At all.
player. Maybe they should have made him like a former professional golfer that cheated or something like that, but
I would have bought, even if you wanted to keep it Canada, I guess you could have been like, didn't used to be a pitcher for the Montreal Expos. I think that maybe would have been a little bit more believable.
yeah.
Okay.
that
Yeah,
works.
pitchers especially, or like,
Curler?
well, there's no, I mean, look,
What kid would be like, oh, weren't you like a curler in the Canadian Olympic team?
I love curling. Anytime it's on TV, I will watch it, but it's always so sad to see the curlers are like on their shirts. It's like, you know, Greg's Tire Shop. Like they have to find like anybody who will sponsor them.
Whoa.
Do you want to sponsor a curling team, Gordo? It's probably gonna be more money than we have in the coffers right now.
It's
Okay.
$11 from S1E1. Like,
Yeah, the other thing about that too is you sponsor them, you give like, that money is to get them like hotel rooms. It's like not a cheap thing to sponsor even something like curling.
What if we sponsor one drink at the minibar?
We need someone to sponsor us. Like, it's the other way around. We're not the
Well,
sponsors.
listen, you got to give first to get.
No, you
That's
don't.
how it works. What goes around comes around.
you only get what you give.
So, the kid's asking him, well, if you don't follow rules, then why should I? He's like, well, for one thing, you don't want to end up stuck doing social work for 5 years. It's community service.
This feels very much like in the episode in Seinfeld when they do the show within the show where the guy hits Jerry's car. That's the premise. Is he hits Jerry's car, he has no insurance, he's forced to be his butler. That's what this feels like, because nobody would ever actually get sentenced to, instead of 5 years in jail, you're a New York social worker for 5 years, who, by the way, also still pulls the salary,
Yeah.
because he's paying for the apartment and everything.
I felt like they did a good job with this in that we talked about it before, like how you give people the origin, and we're finding out his backstory here in a very light way that's not, it doesn't feel forced. So now
I'll agree with that.
we know his past, we know why he's here. It's all being described, but it's like done in like with quick jokes, and it doesn't feel like unnatural conversation. So like, I don't know, I think it was a good way to clue us into everything.
I think it's also a good, like, saying that backstory also is a good descriptor for how he acts as a social worker. Like, there's a reason why he's lax. There's a reason why he acts the way he does.
Well, yeah, he doesn't
For
give a
sure,
shit
yeah.
because he doesn't want to be a social worker. Yeah.
Exactly. And, like, a regular social worker is usually dedicated to their work.
Yeah, it's funny because you get sort of 3 sides of a coin with this, with the 3 people who work there, because you get Laurie, who really wants to change the world as a social worker, Norm, who doesn't care because he has to do it, and then Gomez's character is just horny, like,
Yeah.
trying
He
to
just wants
find
to fuck
excuses to get
prostitutes.
laid as a social worker.
I like when Norm tells him, like, I may have gambled on the sport I was involved in and then avoided paying taxes for that gambling, but you stole. all right, you stole, and he goes through the file, comb. He's like, wait, that's not it? He's like, get out of here. Like, come back when you stab somebody.
And Norm in real life too was a like really, really bad gambler who lost. He bankrupted himself like 3 or 4 times gambling in the course of his life.
It's always the ones who can easily make money back, though, that do it. Like, if I do that once, I'm done forever.
There are stories of him like getting out of, like, they finish an episode of SNL or whatever, it's like 1 a.m. He gets in a limo and just drives to Atlantic City, and then they check in with him on Monday, and he's like, yeah, I lost $50,000 on Saturday night. Like, would just do that stuff. I'm like, you know, gambling that heavy, you can win big, but you can also lose everything you own really easy too.
House always wins. When he's walking out of the room with that kid, you see somebody like drop a large stack of folders on his desk, and that's when like Norm shouts like, "Hey, what the hell are you doing, ass face?"
that ass face is like the most Norm thing ever. Hey, ass face.
It's like not a regularly used insult. It's very him.
Ass face being his boss, Mr. Curtis, who like reminds him like, you know, the minute that I kick you out of here, you go to prison. It's like, it's an interesting dynamic, right? Like, he can't help but still be him, even though he knows how much is riding on this job.
It sets up really good conflict.
Yeah, and I feel like this comes up, you know, throughout the episode, like this whole, like, my job is on the line based on my performance, but also I don't care about my performance at this job.
He doesn't last long in the show, too. He only makes it 5 episodes before they replace him as the boss.
Oh,
They
really?
try to make that guy out to be like an asshole and stuff, but he's just a guy who's a social worker by choice and cares about people and is doing his
right.
job. Like,
He literally cares about children and wants the other people who work there to also care about their job. Like, it's not a bad thing.
like we're rooting for this prick who cheats in the NHL and stuff.
So they changed the boss much like they did in the Drew Carey show?
Yes. But
Mr.
I will
Wick
say,
and Mr. What's the original before Mr. Wick?
I forget now.
Mr. Pitt?
No.
No, that's Seinfeld also.
It was the name of the store, whatever the store.
Winford Louder?
Mr. Winford?
Oh, maybe
It
I'm
might
wrong.
be.
I think it might
We'll have
be.
to look that up. But I do remember the episode where the boss leaves. It's because Norm has sex with his daughter, and the boss has a freak out and runs away. And then he's replaced by the dad from Alf.
Nice.
Cool.
But wait, isn't his daughter a little kid? It's established in the show? This
That's the
episode?
other daughter.
Okay.
Although it's not like it wouldn't be out of the realm, considering that there are a lot of jokes about underage sex work in this episode.
True.
I thought it was interesting when he walked off, Mr. Curtis, that is, he walks by the guy Danny's, that's the character Ian Gomez plays. He like takes issue with the fact that he has like a crucifix on his desk and tells him that like he has to get rid of that. And I just thought that was one of those, you know, when you think about real world versus sitcom world, and like that's something that like would never fly at an office, like telling someone they have to remove a religious thing.
At a government job, maybe.
I don't know. That's one of those touchy, like,
It's way too touchy. Yeah, you have to be like everybody can do whatever
anywhere
they want.
I've ever worked, like if anyone does anything for the sake of religion, you can't tell them otherwise. You let that go.
No, I think you can have like a cross like around your neck, but you can't have a giant crucifix on your desk.
Yeah, especially, like I said, at a, like, government work job.
Separation of church and state.
Yeah.
But there's also religious freedom. So it's one of those, unless they tell you you're not allowed to have any personal items on your desk, then
Yeah, you could
that
fight
would be
it.
able to fly. Yeah.
It's the 90s. They could do it.
90s!
Yeah, this show is very much like, oh, this is the 90s, and this show would not happen any way it does now.
It's barely the 90s. It's like
It's
the
the
last
end,
few
but-
months of the 90s.
But 24 years ago was a different world.
Oh, well, yeah. 5 years ago was a different world. Laurie walks in and Norm starts talking to her about how he gave that dog back and now he wants one of his own. And like Danny's really awkwardly telling him no because I guess dogs bite him a lot.
As the only person on this podcast who's been bitten by a dog, it sucks, and it kind of makes you gun shy around dogs.
I've been bitten by a dog.
I've been bitten by a dog. I just wasn't a huge bitch about it like you were.
You think it's uncommon to get bit by a dog?
I didn't think anybody but me has been bit bad enough I'd go to the hospital.
I can't see the scar anymore. But I got Zorroed by a friend's dog. His name was Scruffy, and his bite carved a huge S in my forearm.
Damn.
Oh, his cousin Sorrow.
I tried biting Jays into people's arms, but it's like fucking so difficult. What are you doing? Give me a second.
If your name was started with an O, it's a lot easier.
Right. Also, I guess it's important to mention that like Laurie is also a social worker. She's just not hanging out in the office. She's, another employee there.
Doing social work.
That was when I realized that she's not his wife. Because the first time you see it is in the apartment, and they're like just together with the dog.
I mean, thinking back, my initial impression, I still didn't. They had too much of a friendly vibe. There was no like hug and kiss or anything like that when she walked in. No talk of like dinner being ready. Like, so I don't know. I just feel like I never got a couple vibe from them.
I feel like it would have been like honey, look, I got us a dog. Like you say us and honey, and you can like change the perception of that so much.
So now Norm's telling Danny that they only bite him because they don't have any hands, because what they want to actually do is punch him.
The amount of one-liners in this that are so funny is insane.
It's tough to not do all the Norm jokes in like Norm's voice and cadence.
This episode would be 3 hours long.
And then when you read them, it doesn't come off the same way because he has such a unique delivery.
This is one of those episodes that was really hard to do notes for because there's so much pausing because you're trying to catch everything that goes on.
So now Laurie suggests, why don't you just get a dog from the pound? But Norm's like, aren't those ones used? I want to get a new one. And that Norm. It like triggers Laurie because now she's thinking about her own life and feeling used and old.
Yeah, like that she spirals into a meltdown about herself here.
It was funny. I think again, we talked about she's great. And it was like over the top without being too much though.
I think they did a great job for a first episode to give you the personalities of the three main characters, like, completely, but all through the episode, not just, like, up front and here's what we're doing. Like, they actually kind of all developed through it, so you knew exactly who they were at the end.
Have any of you guys gotten, like, pets through pet adoption or, like, pounds and things like that?
Mm-hmm.
No, because if they wanted to help animals, they'd give them for free. They still charge you like $2,000 to adopt something.
Well, they're still paying to take care of them until someone gets them, so that costs money.
And it wasn't that much, too. The place we got our cat from last year when we got a new cat was like, I think it was like $300, and it was a donation, and you didn't necessarily have to do it. You had to pay for the shots, but they asked you to make a donation in X amount of money or more. What's really weird, though, is that they made us do a Zoom call and take our computer all the way through the house because they wanted to see everything. Like, they care that much about it. We're like, I'm trying to take this cat in for free here. Like, why? My house is obviously not dangerous for cats.
It's easier for cats than dogs. Dogs, they put you through the ringer. Like, we ended up getting Martha buying Martha because we were going to get another dog. And they just were like, nope, you don't have a backyard. You don't have this. You don't have that. And it's, like I said, just different for different animals. So it depends. Like, if you're trying to rent a hedgehog, they're not going to matter.
It's like, sure, all right, just euthanize the dog rather than give him to me because I don't have a backyard. It's like,
I know, it's insane. It's also weird, too, because they'll check now and be like, they want to see a copy of your lease to make sure. If you rent, they want to make sure that your apartment can, like, it's in the lease that you can have a pet because they don't want to, like,
that's a fair ask, though.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying, but like they check a lot of boxes,
and they'll actually call your landlord.
Yeah,
like they won't take the lease as a stone.
What?
Set in stone?
Correct.
Wow, we got there.
Take your lease as a stone.
Gordo's lease was on a tablet that they carved out.
The 11th commandment: Thou shalt not move from thy house.
Noah's duplex.
I wish I'd have more space.
I always I commend people who will adopt like older dogs and stuff too, because it's so tough. I couldn't do it because it's like the loss of a pet is so like devastating.
It fucks you up.
And when you're getting like a dog that's already like, if a bigger dog, it's already a few years, you already know you've cut the time in half. It's like, it's so tough to know it's going to be such a finite amount of time to like go through all that, like the sad parts, like twice as fast. I don't know. So it's like all the props in the world because like every dog or cat or anything like deserve a good home. But it's like emotionally, I don't think I could handle knowing I would have such a limited amount of time and like going through all that sad stuff so quickly.
I do appreciate, though, I think a lot of people, I think it works for your age, too, right? Like, I know a lot of older people will adopt older pets because they're not, like, Like, it's hard when you get a brand new puppy or a brand new kitten, right? Because they're fucking crazy and they're not trained and they're running around everywhere. And it's a ton of work and you have to watch everything and teach them not to scratch and where to, like, go. But, like, if you're, like, an older person and have, like, the sort of energy to do that, I think that's, like, a big place to get, like, a 5-year-old dog, right? Or a 6-year-old dog and be like, this dog is kind of mellow like I am. And we can be at a good speed and, like, we'll give it a good 5 or 6 years, you know?
Mr. Curtis comes back with like the day's assignments. That's when we find out one of the cases that Norm worked on, the girl, her name was Taylor Clayton. And Norm mentions, yeah, I helped her get a job at like a pizza place. And that was like, you know, one of the things he's accomplished since he's worked there. And then we find out from Curtis that she's now working at a massage parlor. Just for some clarification in the context of like the show, the massage parlor means she's like a straight up hooker. Like, we're not talking about like just like a happy ending thing, because I think they didn't, when I was first watching that, I felt like, oh, a massage parlor, like worst case scenario is like just, you know, a happy ending thing. I never think of a massage parlor as a straight up brothel, which is how it's presented in the show.
Yeah, this is flat out, this is straight prostitution.
Right.
This is straight sex work. It's not like you give massages still. You have to know how to do that. But if somebody wants a happy ending, you can do it for extra money. This is flat out like, also, when you break down the prices too, like, I know this is 24 years ago, but like, you can go have sex with someone for $50, which is
especially
still
Nikki Cox.
with inflation. Yeah, you can have sex with Nikki Cox with inflation for $89. That is not a lot of money. I feel like she could go somewhere else and probably make a lot more money. This seems like a bad
bunny
racket.
ranch. Go to the bunny ranch for that $1,500.
Why do you know the prices?
I've looked it up.
Why did you look it up?
Curious.
Okay.
I was actually curious after reading about it.
I did watch
They
the
have a
Penn and
website
Teller's
now.
bullshit about it once. If you've never seen that, it's really interesting.
Oh, I'll have to watch that. I like that show.
Really like the one on water, bottled water episode.
Every episode was good. When we finished that show, I was genuinely sad that there was no more to watch.
I liked when Norm was defending himself, talking about how he got her the job at the pizza place. His boss was like, well, did you ever call to like see how she was doing there? It's like, yeah, I call out a lot of times. She was never there.
Do you think that's the pizza place that he gets his pizza from? And it was just like, that was the laziest. That's what I thought of it. It was like the laziest thing ever. He's like, oh, well, I get pizza here every day. You're hiring?
Hey, I got this girl here. You want her to work?
Or when he's making the call, it's while he's ordering pizza to like pick up.
And this is when Curtis tells Norm like he has to go to the massage parlor to get her out of there. And he says that someone has to go with them. And like Danny like shoots up and he's trying very hard to volunteer. He says he really enjoys field work. He hasn't had field work in like 6 months. Talking about sex.
And again, we keep talking about this person. This weird to believe that Nikki Cox's character is in high school, right? Or high school age.
I was going to bring it up later. There's
we can wait if you want, but this is the only issue I have with this show.
Big issue with that, yeah.
Because at one point she's like, I will go back to school. Or she at one point says, when I turn 8, when I get old enough to start going to a real strip club, and you're like, oh, holy shit, this is weird.
Right.
This is our third Nikki Cox show.
Yeah. And her sitcom, Nikki, that was created by the same creator, I bet is probably pretty funny because this guy's got a pretty good batting average.
What was the other Nikki Cox show? I remember doing Unhappily Ever After.
Didn't we do the one with the wrestler?
The one with the wrestler?
Wasn't that one when she managed the wrestler? It was her boyfriend.
I don't think we did that show. I don't remember that.
No.
Do you know the name of the show?
I think it was one. Maybe we didn't cover it. I think you talked about the show, and maybe we just never covered it.
Oh, maybe. Because I can't even think of what
so
that
it's our
is
second one. Our first one being Unhappily Ever After with Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yes.
How's
so
your
we have
impression going, Jay?
Terribly.
Yeah, Jay.
Like I said, he doesn't even do the voice anymore. I think it would be he didn't pass it down to me, so it'd be unfair at this point to just...
You've been doing the Norm voice all day, and he's dead and pass it down to you.
And you did Bobit last week.
Oh, fucking don't bring up Bobit ever again.
If you want to go back and listen to Aliens in the Family, go ahead and do that. So, yeah, so in any event, the way this shakes down is that Laurie's the one who's going to go with him to this massage parlor. And she's not very happy about it. And we cut to the parlor, and we see, like, all these girls in, like, robes walking around. They need to find Taylor, and Norm tells Laurie that he has an idea. So they head over to, the reception area or whatever. And Norm's asking if she's working today, Taylor. And when the woman asks if there's anything that they can do for him, he's like, yeah, well, me and the wife are kind of swingers. And you just see Laurie like, oh my God. She's like dying
It's
inside.
so quick on his feet and great, too.
And he tells this girl how she likes to watch him.
Good
She's
for
just
I do
the
like too
family.
that because it's the wife thing. When he finds out how much money it is, he's like, "I'll just take money from my wife's purse."
Oh, it was amazing.
so
Yeah.
fucking great.
Because it's like $100 and he only has 30 on him, and like just the joy on his face going through her purse.
She
And
gets a
she,
great
like-
line of this too, where she's like, "Can I watch somebody else? He's not very good." Like she at least gets a barb into him for it, you know.
What I don't understand is why do they have to keep the act up at this point? Because they've already established that she's working there and they're her social workers. So it's been confirmed she's there. They don't need to lie. She can't say no. Pandora doesn't go back in the box. She already said she's here. Like, let us see her. Oh, we're gonna bring the police into this place of prostitution.
Maybe
Because that wouldn't be as fun, okay?
Yeah. Also, those places I would
hate
imagine
fun.
probably have pretty scary security people involved, and Norm, as we discover later, is afraid to like get her in trouble because she could get him in trouble too.
He could have said all that stuff and then got thrown into a dumpster like in Dirty Work.
I was also thinking of the pizza scene for Dirty Work too. It's like you tell Alfredo and the rest of those greasy Italians, like it's so hard not to think about it.
So we flash forward like a few minutes, and Taylor and Norm are walking into a private room, and she's telling Norm how like she appreciates him getting her the job at the pizza place, but she just couldn't work there anymore. Some guy that used to go there would hit on her. And he's like, yeah, that'd be like someone coming in here and demanding pizza.
that was really funny too.
Again, the one-liners just hit, and they're so good. I wouldn't want to eat pizza at a brothel though.
But would you eat at a strip club?
No. When I see strip clubs have food, I am always very grossed out by
So
that
here's
idea.
the thing. I've never had food at a strip club, personally.
There's always one guy though sitting in the back eating a
But
whole
there was
bunch of wings.
I hate
so
going
many
too
wings.
regional. So the strip club that's like closest to the town that we all grew up in. At one point in time, they had different ownership, and when we were younger and were like first old enough to go to these, they used to have like steak tips and stuff, like a real kitchen.
Oh, God.
And
Yeah.
I knew people who worked there, and everyone swore by the food and said the steak tips were legit delicious. I never had them, but I had only heard positive reviews from multiple
No,
people.
there's
who worked
there's
there.
airborne cum. I'm not eating in a strip club.
Everything. I've only been to strip clubs 3 times in total in my life. It's just not my scene.
Hold on.
But I feel like-
Hold on. I'm sorry to cut you off. Ferg, are you under the belief that there's just cum particles in the air at all times?
Shine a black light in a strip club.
Do you drink when you're in there?
Oh no.
I didn't want to say it, but I was like, buddy, if they're in the air.
Yeah.
I get bottles. It's all right. Safe.
Ferg is a sippy cup.
You get one of those things they give you for like soda bottles that you can put it back in the fridge and not
I'm
lose
saying
the
it's the
carbonation.
same reason why I wouldn't shit. It's the same reason why I wouldn't shit at a strip club.
I've done that.
Oh, you got cum butt.
File that under things that would never surprise me in my entire life, Gordo.
Gross.
Ferg,
You got to be real careful though when you do that, because you got to go in and you got to be quick.
You're not careful with anything.
I don't want to get too far.
That's
'cause
a
we're not even really talking strip clubs, but one other strip club story I'd like to interject real quick is there was this other strip club that wasn't too far from where we all grew up. And I went in once with a couple friends, and I had to use the bathroom just to go number 1. And when I opened the door, there was a dude standing at the urinal, like feverishly masturbating.
Case and point.
And it was like, oh my God. And like, go to the stall and shut the door.
Right.
Would
If
you-
you're gonna do that, at least go in the stall, bud.
The guy's
Why
just
would you
doing
do
that.
that?
Jay goes down, drops his pants to his legs and stuff.
My next question was gonna be, was his pants all the way to his ankles? Because that would have
What?
made it such a great moment.
What are you, crazy with all those particles floating around?
Exactly. He would have got butt pregnant.
Strip clubs to
So,
me, like I said, I haven't been to a lot of them, but they all smell exactly the same to me. It's definitely like stale
Vanilla?
and still and vanilla, and that makes me not
Yeah.
want to think of eating the food because it would just taste like that.
You left out the smell of regret.
Regret is definitely there. The smell of like people's everyone in there just looks like Gil from The Simpsons after they've just emptied their bank account from a ATM that takes like a $17 fee. Like it's the whole thing is such an insane enterprise.
So, Laurie ends up in the room, and she's very skeeved out by being at this place. And she's reminding Taylor that, being here is a violation of her probation, and she can end up in jail. And Taylor's like, this is the only place where I can make this kind of money. And Joe, as you mentioned earlier, until she's old enough to strip. So
Meaning
she's a
that
minor?
she's under 17.
Yeah.
Under 18.
As
rather.
a social worker.
I'll say she obviously doesn't she doesn't pass for like young looking. She's not old by any means in the shows.
But she's 21 in real life at this time.
Okay, and really, even that's even younger than I would have pegged her for at the time. But yeah, there's no point where I would have thought she was like a 16-year-old girl or something like that.
No,
Right.
they do a good job of making the casting of this not somebody who's gonna read super creepily young.
I actually feel like too, Nikki Cox actually did a good job like acting. Like she's very charming and like quick. And I felt like in a way that makes her seem more mature. Like it doesn't like it does. You need someone who's like plays a little more dumb and childish, and she just seemed too quick-witted.
Not to bring up stuff from the past, I remember, but if I remember correctly too, she ends up as a series regular later on, dating Danny.
Wow, good. Well, good for Danny.
Yeah.
So I like when Norman said, "Must have been a hell of a career day at your school."
And again, he hammers in the like, "Oh, you were." Because she keeps saying like, "When I go back to school," you're like, "You don't mean college." This is so weird. And only this show, with only these people, can make this be still super funny without you the whole time being like, "Oh, this feels a lot uncomfortable," right?
Yeah.
And
And
we rarely not cover the show, Nikki.
no,
No.
No.
Jesus Christ.
Is that the one where she has a wrestler?
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
pick
yeah,
it.
no, we haven't covered that. I added it to my list, though.
Yeah, we could do it. So
I mean, we've been trying to figure out
we've done-
enough shows to do a WrestleMania month.
We've
So
done-
if there's a wrestler-involved show.
We've done too many shows. My brain is broken.
there's a point where Laurie pulls Norm off into the hallway to have a quick sidebar with her, and in that conversation we find out that Laurie was Norm's social worker. So that's, I guess, how they met. I don't think they were already friends and they happened to pair them up.
No, I think that you're supposed to believe that, like, she's now paying it for. He should be paying it forward because she paid it forward to him, but they just ended up becoming good friends.
So they head back in the room, and basically that conversation was just shut up and let me do the talking. When they head back in, Laurie's trying to talk Taylor into leaving this place. And Taylor's like, well, what do you know? And Norm's like, she may not know as much as you about like all this stuff, but she knows like plenty more than you about things men don't care about.
This is a great exchange. I feel like all of the best lines of this show happen in the massage parlor, because the Norm quip coming up in a second here is like next level good.
With this, when Laurie's talking about like what her long-term plan would be and that there's nothing sadder than a 70-year-old prostitute.
Yeah. To which Norm says, yeah, you'll be taking your teeth out 20 or 30 times a day. Like, holy shit. I did not expect that much of an old lady blowjob joke to come out of this episode.
Just look at the clients. That's the one thing that's sadder.
That's
That's
I
very
liked
true.
right after that is when Norm decides to play the right or wrong game with her, and he's like, "Is it wrong? Is it right or wrong to steal a loaf of bread? Wrong. All right, what if you steal a loaf of bread to give to a homeless person? Still wrong." And he goes, "Okay, a guy in a bread truck wants to have sex with you in exchange for cash." I was fucking dying when he said that.
Yeah.
I just didn't see it. Like completely.
It's
took
funny
me off
because
guard.
I thought he was gonna get genuine for a second, and then he just didn't.
I knew there would
Right,
be a
yeah.
joke, but I didn't think it was going to be such a hard pivot. You know, like I thought that was going to be like a guy offers you bread in exchange for, like, I don't know. It was just the fact there was a guy in a bread truck now. Like we just got completely off the rails. Like I don't know.
That he kept with bread is such
Yeah.
such a testament to how well this show was written.
It just like it fucking killed me. It was like a great end to that scene. And then like after that, we flash. I don't know if it was the next day or whatever, but Norm and Danny are at a restaurant together, and he's like going through like some dog book until Laurie walks in, and she wants to know what like the new plan is since Plan A didn't work out. He's like, well, originally I was going to do nothing, but figured I was too lazy, so now I'm just going to get drunk. And Laurie's trying to get Norm riled up and basically tells him that he's bad at his job, just like he was bad at hockey. And like Norm's response, maybe this was my favorite line. He's like, hey, I was a great hockey player. I was only a bad hockey player in comparison to other professional hockey players.
I mean, the
Which-
logic is sound.
It's like,
Yeah, it
it's
is.
one of those things, right? Like it sounds funny, but then when you think about it, like you could be the best hockey player in your state, and then you're in the NHL and you're up against all the best players in the world, and you're not that great in comparison anymore.
Right? Or like you could be a genuinely funny person, right? We have a lot of friends who are very funny. I think we all have our moments where we're really funny, but none of us, you put us up against professionally funny people, it's not the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we get wrecked in like a rap battle or like a roast battle.
Oh,
I was gonna
God,
say,
us being on
I
roast
never,
battle.
I
Either
never,
one, yeah.
I never made claim that I would win any rap battles.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I would at least participate in a roast battle just for the fun of it. A rap battle, I don't think I'd go very far. In this scene, though, when Doug is talking, or Danny's talking about the dog, and he's like, well, I have asthma too, so he's got a dog that smokes. Norm has the most genuine smile he can't keep from like laughing at the joke, and it was like heartening to see him smile. He has to keep his head down because he doesn't want to break.
And he just thought of a dog with a cigarette in his mouth.
Yeah,
him laughing,
exactly.
like-
Purposefully blowing smoke in someone's face.
So this was something that confused me a little bit. So after this, Mr. Curtis walks in. Like, is he just like following them? Like they're not at work. They're
I
at a
assume
restaurant.
they're on their lunch break because he said,
Yeah, I think they're on lunch the
drinking your
same
lunch?
day. Yeah, like,
But like they're not at work. They're like at a like restaurant bar. Like you can't.
Yeah, but they're all there. Maybe that's the restaurant that's across the street from the office, and that's where they frequent. Just
Well, they're in
'cause-
their
Or the
lunch break,
ground
so don't go
floor.
in there and fucking badger them about work.
He's probably
Don't be
getting
drinking-
lunch too. And
Well,
his
then wait a
employees
fucking
drinking.
hour and then talk to them about work. Don't go and bother them while they're eating.
I mean,
He's
I've had a lot
drinking.
of, like, there was like every job I ever had bars or restaurants around it that everybody went to, and you just saw people on your break every time because of overlapping breaks. So it made sense to me.
But would your boss go in there and start continue with work while you're in there?
If they were mad at me, sure. I mean, I think
Or
that's
again,
the issue.
if you're consuming alcohol in the middle of the day during your work shift, then yes.
He didn't even really
Well,
mind the alcohol thing that much, like comparatively
like-
to anything else.
He like made fun of him for it. He's like, drinking your lunch again, but he didn't like say, I'll fire you if I catch you drinking a beer again.
Yeah, because he was basically just asking him about how that whole Taylor situation went. And Norm's like, well, it didn't go so well. Also, like, the massage parlor isn't like the way you think of it. And he's like, oh, so it's not like a place where people are having sex for money? He's like, oh, well, I guess it is the massage parlor that you think it is. And Curtis basically tells him, like, you better fix this, or, I'm telling your probation officer, and then you're going to be going to prison. And then he, like, takes off.
And that's
And
bullshit because he's actually made the effort and he's doing his job. He can't help it if she refuses.
Well, no, because, I mean, it kind of comes up later. He can't. Like, that's
If
the
she
thing,
refuses, he
does
has
have
to forcibly report
Yeah,
her.
you
That's
can
the
step
problem.
in at some point. I still don't agree with him ruining their lunch break. It really bothered me.
I know I've worked in a lot of
I'll agree
offices
with
and a
that.
lot of jobs where like you just see everybody at lunch at the same place. I mean, you think of the airport, right, where you work. I mean, there's only so many places in your terminal you can go to eat.
Oh,
right?
I know. And most of the time I'm just staying in my break room. So like there's times where like that's unavoidable, but like I'll turn my radio off and things like that. Like if I'm not being paid, like I'm off the clock. Like don't bother me for that half hour or whatever.
Oh, for sure. Definitely take your radio and stuff there. But like I think of when I worked in Harvard Square, right? Like it's such a congested area that like there's nowhere you can go that you're not going to run into somebody you work with if they're on lunch too. 'Cause there's like 10
No,
restaurants.
I
in
think
a
it's
block.
okay to talk work or, especially when you're around your coworkers and like, yeah, that stuff's unavoidable. What bothered me is he's their boss and he's just running up to them and just continuing with work outside of the work situation, like in a way where he's like following up with things and all this stuff. I don't know. It just felt like that's not they're on their break. Like leave them alone. Talking to your coworkers is different than talking to your boss.
I think the issue here though too is it's salary work. I think anybody here who's on salary work can attest that you're never not on the clock when you're on salary. Like you're always working, right? Like that's the downside of salary is that you're always working. The upside is that you don't have to punch in, you don't worry about overtime, you usually get a good base for doing it. But if somebody calls you at 7 p.m. and says, hey, we need something, it's very hard to say, no, I'm not on the clock right now because you're not paid by the hour. Your shift doesn't necessarily make 9 to 5, right? So I'm going to go with they're probably salaried employees. They probably just get like they work Monday through Friday, but they aren't like punching in. There's a punch clock there.
So technically you're allowed to drink and have sex on the job.
I've done it at every job I've ever had.
So the next scene, Norm, Laurie, and Danny are all in the office trying to figure out how to like fix this situation so Norm doesn't go to prison. Norm's like, I appreciate the help, but he had a long talk with Taylor yesterday and he has a feeling that everything's going to work itself out. And no sooner does he say this, Taylor runs in and says to Norm, guess what? I just quit the massage parlor. I got a new job as a weather girl and I'm going back to school. And Norm's like, great enthusiasm, but that isn't my boss, pointing over at Danny. And he says, and next time, instead of weather girl, how about try fry cook? And now Mr. Curtis happens to walk into like that general area and it starts all over again. And
The beauty
I
of this
kinda-
joke to me was I expected him to say, next time, don't say weather girl, say meteorologist. Like thinking that would sound like it was a more realistic thing to say or would sound better. But instead, he goes the complete opposite and says,
Yeah.
just say you're a fucking fry cook. Like that made the joke so much better. My expectation was something completely different.
I like Nikki Cox's delivery, actually, because when she's doing this all over the second time, she, like, stumbles over saying fry cook because it's, like, not what she wanted to say. So she's doing the whole bit again, but, like, mouthing those words was, like, I don't know, you could see that she didn't want to have to say it. And I just thought it was, like, good acting.
If they
on her
stuck with Weather Girl, he could have said, oh, what channel? And then when you don't see her on TV, you're caught in that lie.
True, but I
like
don't
the
think that's where
continuity
they're
of
going.
that.
I was going to say that it was definitely rehearsed. That's why she stumbled over Fry Cook. Not that she didn't want to be one, but she practiced Weather Girl.
Yeah, she wasn't prepared for the line change. Mr. Curtis is telling her, oh, you must feel good about yourself. And she looks at Norm and she's like, yeah, but not as good as I would have felt if I was a Weather Girl. And then, like, Norm, like, shoos her
that
off.
was the job she picked for herself. That would be, like, her dream job. Because she's mad that she doesn't get to be that. That was, like, her aspirational hope, was I'd like to be a Weather Girl.
Like, if you're going to have, like, a fun little fantasy moment, get to be whatever you want. So, like, Norm shoos her out of the building in a hurry and tells her, like, well, you're cured, so you never have to come back. And then Curtis says, I never thought I'd say this to you, but good job. And then in the next scene, we see Norm and Laurie, and they're in Norm's apartment watching TV. His new dog runs into the room. And it's like this wiener dog and has like a mop attached to the stomach. And when Laurie asks like what that's for, Norm's like, oh, look, for this new trick. And like, I like the way they shot it. They literally he places the dog at like one end of the couch and he runs under the couch and the camera follows it along and just see its belly with the mop dragging across the floor and dusting under the couch. I thought that was really funny.
It's like Norm teleported though, because Norm puts it down and then he's on the other side and he catches it. I know it's not like a big distance, but it's like he's all of a sudden on the other side.
Yeah, you don't see his like feet moving.
I like that he was like, attack the dust bunnies. The dog started going. Cute. That was cute.
I do have a joke for that type of dog.
I don't get the whole dog thing. From the little I know of his character from this, he seems like he's lazy and wouldn't want to take care of anything, and that's another big responsibility. It just doesn't seem like something he'd want to do.
I don't remember it offhand, but I had read that he does a bit in his stand-up about wanting to have a wiener dog. So there's something
he does
there.
Yeah. You know why the cowboy got a dachshund? Because he wanted to get along, little doggy. That's a good joke. That's not, obviously it's not invented. Someone told me that like a million years ago, and I was always like, that's always in my head.
Was that one of Norm's jokes from the Bob Saget roast?
No, but it would have been.
That one's good. I'll give it to you.
So now there's a knock at the door, and it's Danny, who's like definitely afraid of dogs, so he doesn't want to come in at first. So Norm has to like grab the dog and throw it in the bathroom.
I love that he runs right back on the door, slams it like.
It just slams the door shut.
And then Laurie starts to tell Norm how cool it was that, he pulled off what he did today. And Danny's like, yeah, I almost believed it. And she's like, wait, believed what? Because he wasn't in on any of this. And then, like, she's starting to realize what happened and tells Danny that she needs to speak with him alone. And then I like this actually from Danny, because he's like, no, I'm sticking by my friend. And he's going on, like, this whole thing about how they're side by side and how he's not going to just leave him in the middle of this. But all the while, he's throwing his jacket on and, like, scurrying out of the house. And, like, he's talking up until the point where he leaves.
I do like that he leaves all the food there. And then eventually Laurie leaves, too. So Norm just ends up with 3 persons worth of Chinese food. That's a win.
I know.
That looks like a lot more than 3 persons worth of Chinese food, too. It's this giant fucking thing.
He brought in, like, a case of individual boxes. Yeah, it was very strange.
Yeah.
To go back a second, too, I thought that little part with Danny, like, scurrying out of the house was actually... that was, like, the first time I found his character to be, like, pretty likable, too. I thought that was, like, really funny, and it kind of gave me that, there's a little meat on the bone here with him. Like, he's going to be, like, a good addition to the show.
So I was saying earlier that they do a good job of, as the show goes on, developing the characters. So by the end of the episode, you have fully formed characters, but they don't push it all up front or push it all to the end. Like, you kind of see them evolve, which I think it makes you like the characters way more because you're there with them for like an arc.
Because I think until then he just kind of comes off as like weird and sleazy. You know what I mean? So that's the first time he was like a little bit like fun.
I think that he just was going to be the quirky work friend. You know what I mean?
Didn't talk.
No, that's all I was going to say.
No.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Gordy. I was just going to say,
okay.
Like, you said weird and sleazy. We didn't talk about it earlier, but there's even a scene, too, where The Office, like, right before this, where he's like, I'm going to go down there, I'm going to have sex with one of these people, I'm going to leave them a pamphlet. Like, he's already, like, actively talking about going to the go to have sex with a sex worker.
Well, I don't think he flat out said he was gonna have sex with them, did he?
No, he did. He said he'd have sex with them, and instead of paying, he'd leave a pamphlet.
Okay.
So he's also cheap, so which is even better.
When Norm's alone with Laurie, he admits what he did, but he says, you know, what was I supposed to do? I'm trying to avoid prison. And like, I guess, again, we talked about like, he can't force it. So, I mean, I guess that is his real option, is that you can just force her to go to this thing. Like that's the real answer. Not
he doesn't
just,
want to throw her in prison because he got a second chance, and it shows that like deep down he's a good person.
Yeah, Laurie's really disappointed in him and makes that very clear, telling him that, you know, he's going to ruin her life by letting her continue on with this, and how selfish he is. And, you know, he always does what's just easiest for him. She's like, you even make your little dog dust. She's like,
made me laugh. Great delivery.
Real quick though, one thing I wanted to point out, the weird little things. As she leaves the house, he like closes the door. I don't know if anybody noticed, like one of the set dressing things is that he's got a pair of hockey ice skates hanging on his coat rack next to the door. That is the most dangerous. Has anybody here ever ice skated before? Do you know how sharp skates are? And they're on the thing where you move your hand up to grab your coat every day. That is just a bad placement for ice skates.
he also has hockey pucks on his coffee table. I don't know if he uses those as
used them as coasters.
Yeah, I thought coasters as well.
Because at one point there was like 3 hockey pucks just on the table. I'm like, okay.
I mean, he had a ton of them, and then he got fired. And he doesn't want to waste all his equipment.
What am I going to do with all these pucks?
You ever bought coasters before? Coasters are expensive.
Yes.
I do.
And then when they
on
break,
this desk.
you're really mad because coasters are expensive.
Jay's Norm and John Lovitz are the same.
I was
don't
going
know
to say
that.
the same thing. He sounds a lot like the Jay Sherman character. When he
They're
Yeah,
not, their cadences are not that far apart.
So give us a John Lovitz.
just did this whole episode.
Yeah, it's very
Have
similar.
you been paying attention?
I guess Norm is a little more
Buy
like,
my book.
yeah, he's losing his mind, and I'm reaping all the benefits. From one of my favorite movies, The Wedding Singer.
Did you see that? When did you see it?
Alone
Yeah,
in a
when did you see
basement.
it?
Oh, that makes more sense.
Alone.
Why did you have to watch it in a basement?
I don't know. And I was still a kid. I don't even know how I ended up in that situation.
Shouldn't follow the free candy van.
Alone in a massage parlor.
Yeah. So we flash forward a little bit. Now Norm's back at that massage parlor, and he's in Taylor's like private room, and he's telling her how he feels bad about what he did to her, and he thinks he figured out a way how to fix this. And he shows her this ad he found in the paper for a job that pays like just as well. And he goes to read it, and it says, "Models wanted, no experience necessary." And she's like, "Norm, that's an ad for hookers." "Oh man, I ordered choice cuts of beef from the ad over here. I'm gonna get a young boy, aren't I?"
I'm gonna get a young,
Young
boy.
boy.
The fact that he added young makes the joke so much funnier somehow. The delivery is perfect.
I like a world where even if he's correct, if he had not figured that out until it was too late, and he's excited, like, the meat guy's here.
The literal meat guy.
And he's just standing there excited with some A1 sauce.
Meanwhile, he's going to get beef.
I don't imagine A1 sauce is a good sexual lubricant.
Probably isn't.
Why not?
Probably got like vinegar in it.
Yeah, I imagine
got-
it's gonna
yeah.
hurt in the hole.
It's going to hurt on your pee-pee.
I don't even like to eat it.
You don't like A1 steak sauce?
No,
I
I like
like A1.
barbecue sauce. I don't like A1.
Barbecue sauce
I
on a
love A1.
steak?
Yeah.
I
Interesting.
mean, A1's basically just watered down barbecue sauce.
it's got its
it's like
own
a
very unique
Worcestershire.
flavor, though. A1 sauce is very.
I
specific.
like A1. It's just
I haven't had it in years.
It's I'll
I
use
love
I had some
steak-
recently this summer.
I'll use steak sauce. I just specifically
Really?
don't like A1.
I assumed, Joe, that A1 was going to be one of those sauces to low-key have fish in it.
No, oddly, it doesn't. Yeah, it's one of
Yeah.
those weird things where like we had to check and no.
Hmm.
There's so many weird things. Like every brand except for one. of
Worcestershire
the-
sauce has fish in it.
Worcestershire
You be
sauce has
careful.
it. So like, if you cook anything like, and that's used all the time in barbecue, right? Like people be like, "Oh, we made a thing for the chicken." So I've had problems
People
before
throw
with
it in
that.
like their like mixture to make burgers
Yeah.
and stuff all
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah, Worcestershire's in a lot of stuff.
Well, the thing
Yes,
is,
we'll have
like,
to be careful.
I think we've had steak talk before, but like as much as I loved A1 growing up, as you get older and you buy like nicer steaks, it just doesn't
Yeah.
feel right to dump sauce on it if I'm going to
No,
spend
yeah,
a
I
lot of
mean-
money on a steak.
Your optimal steak doesn't need anything.
Right.
Just a lot of
Correct.
ketchup, right, boys?
Ugh. I know
Just
you're not
kidding.
kidding. too.
Donald
No, you're
Trump.
I
not
am kidding. I don't put ketchup on steak.
Tell me you've never done it.
Probably as a
I-
kid. Not
Yeah,
now.
I've done it as a kid.
As a kid, sure. I will say this
They-
though. I know we had this conversation before, but I would rather have a good burger Like a really good burger.
Oh, the good burger, home of the good burger.
You know, they were like one day shy of wrapping up filling on that when the strike happened.
Maybe they can use AI to finish.
2 people I know were working on it, and they were like, it was like this close, and they had to fucking stop.
Joe likes burger meat.
Yeah, I prefer a good burger over a steak any day. Okay, I prefer
burger meat.
I prefer a great burger over a great steak. Jesus Christ, it's changed the wording around.
No, I think you've said this before on here, but I disagree. I like them both, and I don't. They're too different. It's like just the fact that they're both beef doesn't mean they're.
Yeah, that's like comparing like a sausage to bacon. It's completely different.
Well, because people make burgers out of steak, though. Like that's a big thing.
Yeah, but they don't.
Beef.
They don't taste the same. It just. It's
if my preferred red meat is a burger. I guess I'm saying, and I think a really good burger is more. I think a really well done burger to
That's
me
gross.
is more enjoyable than a really well done. Fuck, you can't say well done either because it's a type of cooking. All right, I'm done. I'm out of this
I
one.
like that you went full Homer Simpson in the middle though. You said burger.
Well made.
Thank you. A well-made burger to me is more enjoyable than a well-made steak. That's what I was saying.
Well, in any event, he's going over all these programs that she can sign up for, and she's just not interested. And she says like she wants to stay at the parlor. And he tells her he doesn't want to have to do this, but he can force her into one of these programs if he has to. And she says, well, if you do that, I'm going to tell your boss that you paid me to lie, and then you're going to go to jail. He's like, you can't do that. That goes against prostitute social worker privilege.
I can't believe you didn't mention this, but I think one of the greatest one-liners this whole episode where I like died completely. It's like, look, Taylor, I don't think you understand. You're a huge whore. Like spit my drink out when he's trying to reason with her, and that's his logic.
And eventually he's like, he gets to this point where he's like willing to go to jail to fix this. And he's like, you know what? Fine. But before I go to jail, you're going to have to give me a few pointers on how to please a man before I go.
Again, very much like dirty work.
And he's like, I'll tell you that.
Way out of line.
You know what the worst part is? Well,
I had a good mind to speak to the warden about this. I'm watching Dirty Work tonight.
So we flash to the next day when Norm and Danny are walking into the office, and Danny asks Norm if like Curtis has called him yet. And he's like, I haven't heard from him. He's not even sure if like Taylor filled the report out, but they did cart her off to that apple farm last night, so it's only a matter of time. The apple farm was like, when he was going over the list of programs she could join, that was one of the ones he mentioned. I think that's the one he said that was like for heroin though, like specifically.
No. There was another one for heroin.
That
He's
was
like,
the
look
other
at all
one was
these
heroin
prostitutes picking apples.
Yeah, oh, okay, you're right.
Yeah. I like that.
And he's like,
that
oh,
term,
you don't do heroin, huh? This one looks pretty good. I had you pegged for this one.
When he says it here, though, because of the way he says things, it just sounds like an old-timey term for like an insane asylum. It's like, oh, they send you to the booby hatch, the apple farm.
you go to the cuckoo's nest.
Yeah.
So as they're talking, Curtis walks in. He's like, Norm, could I see you in my office immediately? He like heads into the office, but Norm doesn't follow him like immediately. Before he goes in, he's like, you know what? If I'm going to go to prison anyways. And he like calls Curtis's wife and says like, hey, you know, your husband's been cheating on you. And then he's like, oh, I'm sorry, honey. Is your mommy on the phone? Laurie walks in and tells Norm how proud she is for doing the right thing. And he's like, well, the problem with doing the right thing is you end up going to jail. And Laurie holds up that report that Taylor submitted, and apparently she intercepted it from the clerk for $200.
That was very nice of her.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's
this
like,
is a very
they're
money-heavy thing.
Yeah.
Laurie lost so far $270 on this case and keeping Norm's job.
I mean, they're really good friends. And like when he does something morally correct like this, and she realizes that there is good in him, if a couple $100 is going to keep your friend out of jail, and when you see they're trying to be good, like that's an easy decision.
I'm kind of pissed that Taylor still submitted the report. I kind of thought it was a bluff.
Well,
I
she
did
was
too. That
pissed.
kind of bummed me out.
She's being like forced out of, you know, the job she wants to stay at and going to like a correction facility thing, like a rehab thing. So
I will say it's been a long time since I was in that much contact with a 16-year-old or 17-year-old girl, but I can imagine too that they're acting out of spite and anger, like because they're not an adult yet, right? Like that's the kind of shit you do as a teenager, so it makes more sense. when you give this show's weird, wacky plot of child sex work.
And then
Also, the 1997 conversion on $200 is closer to 400. It's 380 today.
but I mean, like they appear to be best friends now. So I think like if one of you guys called me, like,
I'm just
hey,
saying.
I'm
that
gonna go
was-
to jail. If you can
Yeah.
spot me $400, we might be able to avoid this. I'd be like,
Good luck in the
sure.
big house, Jay.
I'd be like,
I've legitimately bailed friends of ours out of jail before, and one of them legitimately never paid me back. And I don't care anymore because it was like 15 years ago, but sometimes I'll be having some drinks and the thought will come to me and I'll be like, how fucking dare you not send me the money for bailing you out of jail that time?
I paid my own bill.
Yeah, well, the people I was with when they got arrested one time had no money with them, so we had to front that for them. And it has to be, I don't know if you can do it back then it was just cash.
So yeah, when I went, so
Yeah.
Jay did his
told the story
vacation
before,
at the
yeah.
apple farm.
When
So,
I
yeah,
went to jail.
So I got put in just like, it was just like a holding cell thing. So, but when I got put in, I had a ton of money in my pocket. And it was like, so I used to like make t-shirts in like high school, and we were collecting money for a shirt that I had made. And I had all this money on me that I had to go to the bank like the next day. And like when they're going through my pockets, like, what are you doing with like $800 in your pocket? Because I'm a high school kid. It makes no sense for me to have that kind
You
of
were
money.
immediately
Dealing
suspect for
drugs.
something else now.
I'm like, I make shirts. like, but yeah, luckily I covered my bill. So
All cause you couldn't keep your damn mouth shut. You had to yell across a giant park.
Was this the Salem one?
No.
No, this is in Winthrop.
This was when we saw Club Dread.
no, Joe, it's the first time I went to jail.
It's the first time people went to a movie without him.
This is the second time.
Oh, no, that would be the second time.
Yeah, that was the second time. That's when I finally snapped. So when Norm realizes what she did, like, they go and they hug one another. And while they're hugging, Mr. Curtis storms out of the office and says someone has to hold down the fort. He has like big problems at home and he has to sprint out because his wife's under the impression that he's cheating now because of the call from Norm.
Funny joke,
is
but
great
again, this
frantic
poor
acting.
guy, he's just a nice guy
See, okay.
doing his job.
I
and
read
he
this
gets
differently. His candor alluded to the fact that she caught him. Like he actually was cheating.
No, she just called and said, "Are you cheating on me? Like I'm throwing all your shit out of the house." And he's like,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like Norm obviously was trying to fuck with him, but maybe opened a can of worms that was already happening.
I didn't personally read it that
I
way.
think
And
the
I
wife
think
didn't
just
either.
called freaking out because some guy called.
Was this guy
ratted on
not
him.
seem like somebody who would cheat on his wife? Because I got that vibe.
I don't think he's some guy that could cheat on his wife.
What you guys are saying I think is probably correct, but I love Nick's version of this where like she calls and she's like, "You're cheating on me," and he's like, "You found out about Susan," and she's like, "Then you're fucked, right? Because
Yeah.
you let it slip that you are doing it." I do like that idea, but again, I think it's probably open to interpretation, right? Because I never tell you.
It would have been funnier if, because they like had to pay for the brothel, like they had to bring home like receipts and stuff, and like to get reimbursed, and he had them all, and she finds them.
She got a receipt for the brothel for 1 sex and 1 plate of steak tips, and she was like, "Not only were you cheating on me, but you ate brothel food."
you didn't even ask me if I wanted any dinner that night. Ferg, you have a great point too. It's like, to us, because Norm's the main character and Mr. Curtis is the antagonist to him, you perceive him as the bad guy. But when in reality, when you're looking at this from the outside, like Norm's the flawed character. He's the only one who's like making like real mistakes here.
So it's a lot like Walter Peck in Ghostbusters. He's made out to be this like horrible villain, but he's just a civil servant doing his job.
He's trying to literally make it so they don't make a nuclear explosion that unleashes ghosts upon the entire city. And the only thing they do is tell him that he has no dick,
No dick.
and then cover him in marshmallow. That poor fucking guy.
Oh, you're talking about like the weird Ghostbuster movie.
Oh, I fucking hate you.
You're the
I
worst.
thought you were talking about the cinematic classic 2016 version. Well, in any event, we cut to later in the day and we see Norm and Laurie sitting in his apartment again on the couch. And she asks him if he's heard from Taylor. And he's like, "Yeah, actually, she sent me a card thanking me." And I'm like in the course of a day, like she went to this place last night and sent him a card and it was like received like that fast.
Do we know how much time has passed?
I looked back Everyone, all three, because Danny's there too, all three of them are wearing the exact same clothes
yeah.
from the scene right before.
Maybe
Which
he's
could have
just
been an
being
oversight,
a week
sarcastic.
later. A week later, and they cycled into that outfit again.
Everyone's got their Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. Like,
I'm just trying to do some help for it.
it was just one of those like continuity things. Like, I think a little bit of a mess up there.
I'm just gonna go with Norm's being sarcastic, like he always is.
Also, I noticed like there was just so many snacks on that table. Like, so many snacks.
Everyone loves snacks.
They're just binging all junk food, but then there's also a jar full of celery and carrots, but like no wings. It's just like
ruined
celery and carrots.
The one part of the wings nobody actually wants.
It it looks like it's the spread like if you're meeting up with friends to watch like football, but I don't.
But it's just
know if
him
that's
and
what they're
Laurie.
doing. Yeah,
They're clearly meeting up to watch curling.
Yeah. Obviously. While they're sitting there, there's a knock at the door. When Norm goes to open it, there's some dude there saying that that's his dog, like that wiener dog that he has now. He's like, no, I got this from the pound. He's like, yeah, well, I left him at the pound, but like my wife's pissed, so now I got to get the dog back.
No, fuck that guy and fuck that pound for giving out his address.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah,
You
that is a
cannot do that.
breach. I love that they did this though, because if they did it the other way, if it was like, look, my wife took my dog to the pound and it's my best friend,
Yeah.
you'd be like, no, but you're totally on Norm's side here.
Yeah, he's the bad guy here.
Oh yeah.
Norm flat out says, you probably beat him.
Yeah.
This dude pissed me off. Like,
Me
Yeah,
too.
this
you
guy
don't
was-
have any rights to this dog at this point, and you're demanding that he give him back. And yeah, and like you said, like if there was some sob story behind it, maybe. But no, you're just the dick who dropped the dog off at the fucking pound when you.
Yeah,
weren't
I didn't
supposed
want
to.
this
Yeah.
anymore, but now my wife's pissed, so give me my dog back.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, all right, guy. So, like, obviously Norm's refusing, and the guy's like, you can't take my dog. He's like, we're social workers. We can take children. And he shuts the door on him.
Such
I
a
love that
great
line, yeah.
to end on.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great close. And yeah, that was the conclusion of the episode. Yeah, I mean, listen, I guess just to go back, and we've talked a lot in the front of the episode, but again, just like, what a talent Norm Macdonald was. And I feel like in his later years, I think because he was sick and he wasn't really, I don't think he talked about it. Was it a silent one? Kind of like we'd recently lost Paul
I think
Rubens.
Yeah, he didn't bring it up.
He didn't really
Yeah,
tell
he didn't
anyone that he
bring it
was
up.
sick. So like you didn't
His
hear
friends
much from
knew,
him
but
for a little
like
bit.
it wasn't
Yeah.
a public thing.
Right. So like, all of a sudden he just kind of wasn't in the light anymore, and he was doing like little things privately, and then
He was doing that.
He was gone.
I think that talk show thing he did was probably the most like the thing he did up until he died.
like one of his
right?
final
Like,
like
yeah.
acting
Yeah.
credits or whatever. But yeah, just again, like just a bummer that Norm's not here anymore. And it was fun to watch this. Like I said, I don't really remember this show existing really. So to kind of watch it fresh was fun for me. There was no nostalgia there. It was almost like this new show is just unearthed.
And I say it all the time too. One of those shows where I'm like, how is this not on a streaming network? There's big
That's the
names in
thing.
it. It's on a big network. It's not that old.
I
It's
want
not...
it has to be a music thing again. If it's the same creator and stuff as Drew Carey and
Maybe it's just a licensing thing with like whoever owns the shows is just like holding the licenses for whatever reason. But
Yeah, who was the production company?
this was
I forget off the top of my head.
Mohawk.
the
Yes, it was.
It's Mohawk.
yeah.
Is there
right,
anything
Mohawk.
weird with them?
No, because that's the same company I think who does Roseanne and stuff too. So
Didn't they also do Drew Carey?
yeah, I would
Yeah,
imagine
so we said like, but Drew Carey isn't on anything either.
the problem with Drew
Um,
Carey though is that they did. I don't remember the Norm Show doing this as much, but like the Drew Carey Show had episodes where like people were constantly doing like musical numbers, right? So they were having
Yeah.
music all the time. I mean, the episode I always think of Danny in this show was the episode where they do the full Monty, and there's like
Right,
the
but
strip club
usually,
scene.
usually those types of credits, like when you buy like the rights to the song for the episode, it's for like in perpetuity for the episodes and stuff. So
pre-streaming.
it's only,
Yeah,
but that was only problems with like sales and like DVD sale and stuff could be issues at times. But
Yeah, so
This
that's
is
why you can
interesting.
still watch Drew Carey Show on some of the terrestrial TV stations. I forget which one still plays it. Like Comet or one of those channels like plays like a block of that and then a block of Night Court every day, right? So they have the rights to play them on TV, but they don't have the rights for anything past that. And nobody was expecting to put out a 10-season show on VHS. That would be a truckload of tapes, right? And nobody could have ever foreseen what we're at now with streaming. So I think unless people can go and rework those rights, and I would think the Drew Carey Show is a big enough show to do it, but he's come out and said too that it's probably never going to happen. And I imagine he's got a better idea of it than we do.
That one will forever blow my mind. It's like one of the biggest shows of all time. It's
And it
no
lasted
way.
it really
10
was.
years. It's one of the best sitcoms of the 90s, and we can't watch it. That's a huge bummer to like everybody. And Drew Carey is hugely popular. He's still doing Price is Right. He's on TV every single day.
WWE Hall of Famer.
I was just going to say WWE Hall of Famer. He burns his hand on the light bulbs in the Weird Al video, which I think about all the time.
And I do want to mention, by the way, for those of you who want to watch this episode, this is very findable on YouTube and stuff, Norm. I don't know if a lot of episodes are. I wouldn't be surprised if you could find a good chunk of them.
I found
But again,
a good chunk of them.
Yeah, Norm and the Prototype, available on YouTube, so you can go watch it there if you'd like.
Or you can
I guess I
$200 on the out-of-print DVD box set. That's what I found earlier today.
Or you can just watch all of Aliens in the Family, which is also on YouTube. The
Why
entire
was
show.
why was this called Norm and the Prototype, though?
No idea.
He didn't want to call it the pilot?
Like, yeah, we gotta do something
Yeah,
more
that's
creative.
interesting. There's no prototypes here.
It has nothing to do with the episode.
Because John Cena
Was there
came in really
another-
early.
Yeah, we've done another show that was called Prototype.
Yeah.
And I think it's just swappable for pilots sometimes.
We did one called Prototype, and I can't remember off the top of my head, which is going to be very frustrating.
Was it recent or a long time ago?
I think
Was
a while ago.
was it Wings? Because it wasn't called Pilot, and we thought that was weird for a show about planes.
That sounds right. Because remember we were like, that's
Yeah,
a
it
missed
does.
opportunity. Call this pilot.
Oh, I forget which one it is. It George Lopez. The first episode of George Lopez was called Prototype.
Okay.
Okay.
Prototype in that one?
See, but the prototype
But
for
there
George
was
Lopez.
like a part. They worked in
because-
like part store or whatever.
Yeah, they're like
I guess
manufacturing.
yeah.
Yeah, they work
It
in
makes a
a
little
factory,
more
like an aerospace factory.
But yeah, I mean, I think we've kind of done this at like pretty good length and covered everything we need to cover. So unless anyone else has anything to say about the show, might as well get into our green light or cancel. So I'm gonna go in the order I see you guys in. Joe, starting with you.
Yeah, I mean, like, we talked about so much about this, and it's harder now too, right? Because it's really sad with Norm passing. Like, that one just hurts. If I could have anybody go and listen to those things I mentioned earlier, or on his last stand-up record, he did another 25-minute thing about people going missing in cheese sandwiches that is just like next level comedy. Everybody in this is great. Everything about this is great. It's a shame it's not streaming somewhere for everyone to see it. I hope that all the episodes are on YouTube. I'm going to look for it. I genuinely laughed out loud so much. I think the key to this for me was, I mentioned earlier, we did some episodes recently that had so many jokes that all failed, and this had like triple the amount of jokes and they all worked. It's impossible to not greenlight something that does that. And again, I think it is a miracle that they deal with underage sex work at a pilot for a sitcom and make it funny and don't make it weird or uncomfortable. It's kind of a perfect show. I loved this. It's a green light.
Berg.
Yeah, I think after Aliens in the Family, I would have greenlit anything this week, but luckily this one is greenlight worthy anyway. I think the cast size is the perfect size. You get to know each person pretty well. Everything Norm says is funny. It's like watching Dirty Work, but in sitcom form almost. Like, not much more to say. It's just borderline perfect. I love this show. I'm gonna look to see if I can find the whole thing. Green light.
Nick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just echoing Joe and Ferg's sentiment. It really is kind of just like the perfect sitcom. There's nothing about it that's like, I don't know. I'm having a tough time finding the words to just explain how perfect it is as far as a sitcom goes, because it's just funny the whole time. There's nothing serious about it. They don't try too hard in any aspect. And it's Norm's humor. I mean, like, Norm, you can tell Norm had a big part in all of the writing for this, right? So if you enjoy Norm Macdonald at all, then there's no reason you wouldn't enjoy this show, because it's just full of him in all aspects. The supporting cast was great. Laurie Metcalf's a home run. I got to imagine that she's kind of a linchpin to this show, right? I mean, Norm Macdonald's great, but I mean, he alone may be not able to do a show that is good and successful. I think she's like a really big part of why this show is good. The rest of the cast is great, and I, like Ferg, am going to try very hard to see where I can find the rest of this show, because I definitely want to watch it. If you go on Amazon right now and you try to find the complete series, you can see all buying options. The cheapest option for the full series of the Norm Show is $500. People are selling it for $625. It's not Bezos. It's just these people selling it like eBay
That's third
style.
party. I looked on
Amazon.
eBay. You can get it as low as 200, but
It's still,
So-
that's fucking crazy that it's that
crazy.
much.
It's unnecessary.
Yeah. For 30 episodes is wild. But yeah, big green light.
Gordo.
Yeah, there's nothing that I'm going to say that's going to rock the boat or go against anything that anybody else said. This is a green light front to back. It had the right pacing. It was funny front to back. I love Norm Macdonald, so there's no reason why I wouldn't love this show. I think Nick is right that Laurie Metcalf is like the anchor to this show. It's just funny, and it's got a little wiener dog. I can't find any fault in it. It's almost perfect sitcom. Green light.
Yeah, listen, I don't have anything controversial to say at this point. I had a lot of fun watching this. I don't know why I didn't know that this show existed, other than the fact that it came out like kind of right before we went to high school, and we've talked about this before. It's just kind of that age where we're just preoccupied with other stuff and we're not as focused on television. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. But I thought the show was a lot of fun. I liked it. I thought the cast was pretty well rounded. It was upbeat. Went by real fast. I liked it. So yeah, under the right circumstances, if I could find it, I would definitely watch more. Again, yeah, just unfortunate it's not easily findable on like Hulu or something like that. But with all that being said, perfect 5 out of 5 from us. So congratulations to the Norm Show, or later just Norm. You do live on for episode 2 through us. So I want to thank all of you guys who listened. Again, go to S1E1pod.com. Rate, review, subscribe, do all that stuff. Hit us up on Instagram and X. So yeah, go ahead and do that. It's been fun covering this episode, so thank you, and hit us up. Let us know shows that you'd like us to cover in the future, and we'll definitely get to those when we have time. But until then, we'll catch you again next week with another new episode. Thank you. Goodbye.
I think we got the best bread truck sex.